Welcome to the Sellernomics Podcast, where we share valuable tips and information in the Amazon and e-commerce space. Each week, we deliver the best interviews with some of the top Amazon personalities in the industry to help you grow your business. Today's episode is brought to you by GTIN, the global leader in FBA auditing and reimbursements. Get $400 in free FBA reimbursements at GTIN.com/Sellernomics. And now, here is your host, Lisa Kinski.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Sellernomics. I am your host, Lisa Kinski, and today I'm speaking with two friends from GS1 US, and we are going to be talking all about product barcoding for Amazon sellers, what it means, why it's important, and how to get it done to terms. So let's go ahead and bring on Shane Morris and Megan Baumer. Megan, Shane, how are you guys doing?
Doing great today. Thanks for having us.
Doing awesome. Thank you. Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Thank you both so much for jumping on. So generally we do the about the business at the end, but I think GS1 has such a unique offering. It's important for us to hit it up top. Would you guys explain to us a little bit about what GS1 US does?
Absolutely. And I appreciate you asking that question because it's sometimes more complicated than it needs to be. So I hope I do a good job here. So GS1 US is a member organization of GS1. And we're actually a global supply chain standards organization. GS1 standards are the most used supply chain standards in the world. They're used by over 2.5 million user companies, and these companies generate 6 billion transactions daily. Now, in the Amazon community, I like to watch the faces of people when I tell them what we do, because the people who do know us in this space just think of GS1 as the issuer of the Global Trade Item Number, or the UPC, which we are. But believe it or not, that global trade item number that is embedded in that UPC barcode, it's a key element of the global supply chain. I also like to point out for Amazon sellers, because I think this sometimes they don't put themselves in this space, but if you are manufacturing, importing, warehousing, and shipping product, you're definitely part of the global supply chain. So they're in it. And then just the last point about our business we like people to know is that we're actually a not-for-profit, neutral and industry-driven organization. And how that works is industry actually identifies what business processes need standardization and automation to help the entire industry grow and be more efficient. So it's not a business just looking at themselves saying, how do I get better? But it's a group of industry participants who are trying to uplift the entire industry. So what we do, our place in that is we help them organize. We act as administrators, administrators of the process from idea all the way to a ratified global standard. We then go out into the industry, just like we're doing here, and we help all stakeholders understand and adopt what these standards are. So in a nutshell, that's who we are.
Super easy, right? Crystal clear, easily understood. No. So where do you guys kind of help Amazon sellers specifically? Let's get into where a seller might be in need of GS1 service or interested in what you guys do.
So, GTINs are extremely important across e-commerce. As the audience knows, they're required on most categories on Amazon.
And what is a GTIN? I'm sorry.
Absolutely. So GTIN stands for Global Trade Item Number.
Okay.
In the Amazon community, it's often called the UPC. That's just sort of the colloquialism that's used. But when we're talking about the GTIN, we're actually talking about the number that's embedded traditionally in a UPC barcode. So on Amazon, you say UPC. Here at GS1, we say GTIN, but well, we're kind of all talking about the same thing, which is that unique global identifier. And they're required on Amazon. They're required on lots of other marketplaces as well, not just for new products, but in things like resale, which is becoming really important. Google also recommends pairing your products with the GTIN in your Google Shopping ads, so really useful across the board. And the barcode itself can also prove super useful. So even sellers that are just on Amazon and don't have a physical store location, think about logistics. Fulfillment operations rely not just on product barcodes, but also on logistics barcodes that are on things like cases in order to improve intake speeds. And here at GS1 US, we're sort of really always trying to inspire entrepreneurs to think about the bigger picture. So, while you may not absolutely need a UPC barcode for your online business or your Amazon business, it's much easier and cheaper to build it into your packaging design early on than to have to add it later. So, if you're aiming to grow, you want to get into more retailers, different kinds of spaces, consider that early. You're already identifying your product with the GTIN to sell on Amazon, so it's a pretty easy step to take early on.
Gotcha. And we're talking about, I mean, because I've never sold on Amazon, right? So I'm having a little bit of a hard time like wrapping my head around all these pieces that we're talking about. But we're talking about the actual barcode, right? With the lines and then the number beneath it. So you guys are recommending to incorporate that in the product design first, as opposed to figuring out where to slap a sticker on it afterwards?
Well, just definitely to be thoughtful about that process. You make the decision that makes the most sense for your business, but just kind of consider it early on. Yeah, the barcode, the black lines and white spaces, sticking that on your product now. If you want to sell later on in a retailer, that's going to be required. And yeah, it's probably easier to just have it created initially than to put it on a sticker later on if you need it.
Gotcha. So what are some of these other standards that a growing business, especially on Amazon, needs to be aware of?
I think so. I'm going to back up a little bit. So,
Sure.
and I didn't talk about it in the intro as to what we do as a global standard supply chain organization. So we have a system of standards, and what these standards do is they essentially we base them on 3 pillars, and those 3 pillars are identification, capture, and share. So I'll just briefly go through those, and then I think it's a great lead into the question that you just asked. So the first thing we do is, as far as identification, is we essentially, our system of standards can uniquely identify basically all things within the supply chain. And when I say unique, it means it's unique and will not be globally replicated. So the global trade item number is a unique product identifier for every product that's, if somebody assigns it to their product. We have other identifiers which identify companies, locations, logistic units, things like that. The next pillar then is, once these things are identified, we have standardized data carriers that capture this information. UPC barcode. It's that's a sophisticated way to say it, like it's a data carrier. But we have others as well. And then once this information and other associated information is captured, we then have standardized platforms and mechanisms to share that information across the supply chain. So what's going to happen to a business is, the great thing about GS1 system of standards is all these are interoperable with one another. And so as a small business or an Amazon seller, you're being asked by Amazon to use the GS1 global trade item number to uniquely identify your products. But as these businesses begin to scale and grow, so as a business, you're going to do that. And so now you've adopted GS1 standards. But as you start to scale and grow, either within the Amazon space, or if you start pivoting and going to other channels and potentially brick and mortar retailers, you're going to encounter some of our other standards that are out there in the market as well. These can be adopted and integrated into your business process in pieces. They don't all have to be used at once. And what's nice, so if you're already using that GTIN standard, they're going to augment that standard that you're already using. So I'm just going to run through a couple of these that these sellers will come up into contact with. So sure. One business process that is very common that's built on GS1 standards is called EDI, or electronic data interchange. So what this is how most large retailers and suppliers exchange business documents like purchase orders, invoices, advanced ship notices, inventory updates, things like that. So it's the electronic exchange of these documents. Amazon, so if you're just scaling within the Amazon space, they do utilize EDI. So the company that I used to work for, we were a men's brand, supplier apparel brand. We were a one-piece seller, but that's how we received our POs, through EDI from Amazon. We would send our invoices through EDI, and then our advanced ship notices when we got ready to ship. We never went into the portal, to do anything. It was all done through EDI. The nice thing about EDI, not only did we transmit and exchange documents with just Amazon, but also with Nordstrom, with Macy's, with Dillard's. It's all that same platform. So again, it's standardized and it's automated, and then these integrate within your ERP systems. A couple of other standards, again, as people start to scale. So GTIN, very common out there in the marketplace. The next identifier that's very common is what Megan talked about. It's a shipping barcode. It's called a GS1 128 serialized shipping container code. So the best way to explain this is we're going to use SSCC because we love acronyms here. It's very similar. It's very similar to a GTIN. GTIN identifies a product. The SSCC identifies the ship unit. So that ship unit is going to be a case full of those products. When companies use this, and most, like I say, large retailers are going to require this, it's accompanied with what's called that advanced ship notice. So which is usually transmitted through EDI. So basically how it works is you pack up your shipment, you apply that SSCC to your case. You're going to send an advanced ship notice to your trading partner, to your retailer. So they see what's coming in. So that's been transmitted. So when that package, that pallet or that case gets to them, they scan that barcode. They have visibility into what's in that case, and then they can just route it. So that SSCC has basically transformed and powered distribution. So that's when you go into these big automated centers, it's kind of working off of that technology, if that makes sense. Got time for one more? These are
absolutely.
Okay. So another important standard that businesses are really gravitating to, and I'll get into why they are, is called the global location number. So the acronym here at GS1 is GLN, right? Okay. So this standard is an identifier, so a unique identifier that identifies companies, so like a legal entity. It can identify parties within a company, so like the accounting department, and it also identifies locations. So like it would be a warehouse, a dock, could even be a shelf. So if you think of the GTIN and that SSCC that I just talked about being the what in the supply chain, what is moving around, that GLN is the who and the where. So it gives brands and trading partners full visibility and traceability into their supply chains. So there's some pretty large initiatives out there in retail for improved traceability of products, especially in fresh foods. And these initiatives are all kind of founded on consumer safety. And when GS1 standards are implemented, what they can do is they can quickly identify specific products in case of a recall. So a good example of that, and I don't know if you remember, but I don't know if it was 3 or 4 years ago at Thanksgiving, you couldn't get a Caesar salad, right? You couldn't go get romaine to make a Caesar salad. None of the restaurants had romaine lettuce. And it was, and again, I can't remember how far back that went, but with no traceability to the source of that bad lettuce, the industry, what they did is they just said, you know what, we're taking everything off the shelf. You cannot get it. The GLN accompanied with the GTIN and that SSCC, that allows for identifying that unique product, where it is and where it came from. So companies can be very specific of what needs to be recalled or destroyed. And then what doesn't need to be can remain on the shelves. And that's how some industries are starting to use that. So they're learning that they don't have to pull everything. They can really, through traceability, through the utilization of these standards, identify the source and take care of that.
How would an Amazon seller just starting out know to educate themselves about all of these things? I doubt that Amazon gives you a pamphlet when you create your Seller Central account that says, okay, adhere to these standards.
Well, I think what happens is it's as they start to, it's as they start to scale. And so Megan and I are out in this market every day talking about just pretty much the foundation, which is that global trade item number. That is the foundation of the supply chain because it's uniquely identifying items. But let's just take somebody who's not looking to pivot, beyond Amazon. Let's say somebody who's started out as a passion project, started selling an item that just all started blowing up, and they started to sell more units. They added more colors, different variants. They might, find themselves like, oh, we can't handle this going through the portal anymore. We need to automate some of our, our business processes. So you know, our standards are kind of like, the way I look at it is like you have a retailer or a brand, you have a solution provider, and then we kind of sit a layer below that. We provide these standards that, like EDI, is commercialized by different businesses. So just, I think as businesses start to realize like, oh, we need to scale and automate, they're going to start looking at different ways to do that. And they'll come across like, oh, you know, EDI. And then, you know, within EDI, there's certain elements like this GLN and the GTIN and the SSCC. They all kind of wrap up together.
And I think, Lisa, we do have resources available on our website for our members. You know, most Amazon sellers, a lot of them are our members already because they have that GTIN. We do have a learning management system called GS1 University, where people can sort of watch videos and learn a little bit there. We have an amazing member services team that you can email or call to kind of help talk you through some of these standards and, you know, maybe direct you a little bit towards where to get some additional help too. So if you see it pop up, a lot of people, I think, see it pop up in vendor guidelines when they're onboarding somewhere new.
Yeah.
But, you know, as Shane said, you might also see it as you grow within your Amazon business.
Gotcha. Thank you very much for that. Well, you guys, we're going to take a short break here from our sponsor. And then I want to ask about the possible evolution of the UPC barcode and maybe what standards are going to change coming down the line in the foreseeable future. So let's go ahead and take a short break.
Today's episode is brought to you by GTITA, the global leader in FBA auditing and reimbursements. Get $400 in free FBA reimbursements at GTITA.com/Sellernomics.
All right, you guys, be sure to head over to GTITA.com/Sellernomics for that first 400 in free FBA reimbursements. Shane, Megan, thank you so much for being here with us. Let's get back to it. What about the evolution of the UPC barcode? Are we expecting changes in the near future? And maybe talk a little bit about the history of it as well.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for asking this question because, you know, in the world of standards, there's so much small incremental change, but what's coming now in regards to the changing of the barcodes is actually really huge and exciting, and it's really fun to talk about. But, you know, just to kind of give a little bit of the history, the UPC barcode really is a remarkable piece of technology. It went into use in the early 1970s, and it's basically functioned unchanged since. And there are very few pieces of technology with that kind of lasting power. I did ask ChatGPT for some examples because, you know, any excuse to talk to ChatGPT these days. So, and it gave me some examples from the 19th century, which were the QWERTY keyboard, the incandescent light bulb, and the paperclip.
Wow.
And I think maybe a little bit more relatable from the 1960s, the magnetic strip technology. But I think that says a lot in terms of where the UPC barcode fits. But here at GS1 US, we can't rest on our laurels because we would become obsolete as business changes. And that's why the GS1 standard really is alive. It expands, it contracts, and grows and changes as global business requires it to, right? So in order to meet greater consumer demand for more product information, industry is leading an initiative to enable the use of a 2D barcode at checkout at major retailers across the US. Now, what is a 2D barcode exactly? Well, most people listening are actually pretty familiar with them because the QR code is a form of 2D barcode. It's a barcode that it can carry a lot more data than the UPC. So it can carry critical business information between different businesses. So that's things like expiration dates. And it can carry data between businesses and their consumers. So we're pretty close to a world where, you know, you can pull out your phone, scan a product barcode, and learn all kinds of information that the brand wants to provide you. So it could be things like the product's carbon footprint, or it's, you know, some kind of lab testing information, like, you know, if you're gluten-free, or maybe just videos on how to use that product at home to really try to get you to take that extra step and buy it. But the possibilities you can see for improving transparency, you know, within, you know, product manufacturer and fostering a connection between a brand and consumers are virtually limitless with this change. So we're very, very excited to see how it evolves and, you know, all the great things people use it for.
Yeah, I was actually speaking to I was hoping you guys were going to bring that up and that my info wasn't incorrect. I was speaking to a new partner of GTITA's who's actually a partner of GS1, and they were talking about this new 2D QR code style of barcoding on products, that you'd be able to get all of that details and also include like the company's sustainability efforts and things like that. When is that initiative in place that's not the correct way to ask that question. When will products be expected to have this new barcode on it?
Well, so it's gonna be a little bit of a process. Again, 50 years isn't going to just change overnight in terms of barcoding. But the goal, the year 2027, the initiative is called Sunrise 2027. And the goal is that those major retailers, so if you go to a Walmart, if you go to a Target, a product can carry either a UPC or a 2D barcode, and you'll still be able to check out as normal at one of those retailers. So I think, we've definitely done some work, sort of testing this out with consumers. People are very excited. People want it right now. We totally appreciate that. So I think, some brands will probably adopt it faster. And we just kind of, in terms of, what the sort of end date is on it, we're going to have to wait and see. But I think you are already starting to see it. It's one of those things where you don't necessarily know to look for it until you know it's out there. So you're going to start to see, when you're shopping and stuff, you're going to start to see brands have both of those, both the 2D and the 1D barcode. And I think over time they will sort of phase into exclusively the 2D barcode.
Interesting. I'd be interested to see how that works with checking out products at the store, if they're going to have to change their actual scanners. And then if they have both the 2D and the general UPC, and forgive me if I'm using the terminology wrong, if it's going to scan one over the other and not recognize the product. Because, sometimes there's two barcodes on an item and it won't scan it because you have to cover one up. And I'm interested to see how that works.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're at in the process right now, as we're testing and piloting with some of these, not only with the hardware manufacturers and the software manufacturers, but some of these retailers. But it's pretty interesting to get the feedback that it's not a hardware change, it's a software upgrade. So they've stayed, these businesses kind of stayed at the forefront of it. And it's funny that you brought that up. It's like, which one is it going to pick up? It does pick up like the 2D, like it doesn't get confused. So they're going through all those processes and that testing now. So it should be pretty dynamic.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That's so exciting. So I guess, we'll just talk a little bit more about GS1 US then. You guys have talked about membership. How do sellers working, you guys definitely work within different industries. We can talk about that too. What other industries are you guys in outside of just like e-com and helping Amazon sellers?
Well, yeah. So Megan and I have both been here for a year. And like my background was retail. So I've kind of known GS1. I've known it for years, just from a retail background. And we started in retail. But other industries who are also, kind of very reliant on their supply chains being efficient and resilient have come in and adopted these standards as well. And they found out that the standards can greatly impact, the traceability, their supply chain visibility, and improved sustainability, as we discussed. So one in particular that Megan and I have been doing kind of a deep dive on this past, 6 months is the healthcare industry. And they use these standards almost to their full ability. So the pharmaceutical arm of healthcare, they not only use GTINs to identify their pharmaceutical products, they go a step, kind of a level deeper, and they use what's called an SGTIN. So it's still that global trade item number, but each one of those are serialized. So it goes down to the each. So to explain that, like a 12-ounce can of original Coke is going to have a GTIN, and that GTIN is going to be the same for all 12-ounce Cokes out there in that marketplace. These serialized GTINs literally identify the exact bottle. So that exact can of Coke. So if you think in pharmacy, that's important, right? So they can get down to the bottle of medicine. So the pharmaceutical industry does use a 2D barcode because they hold more information, and there's some regulation there. So when they scan those, they're not only going to get that GTIN, but they can get the batch lot, they can get the expiration date. And then they've also implemented that global location number. So they can identify not only the what in the supply chain, so that specific bottle of medicine, but they can identify who manufactured that medicine, where it is, and where it's going. And then on top of that, they use another GS1 standardized platform called EPCIS. So that's when I talked about how we share information. So this is a platform where they can share all this information with their trading partners, and everybody's got very clear and documented visibility and traceability into their supply chains. So they've adopted these standards specifically so they could really drill down on product authenticity to make sure there's no counterfeit out there, and just to ensure patient safety is why they've done it. And so it's really interesting to see.
Definitely. And talk to me more about like becoming a member of GS1 US. What all does that entail? What does it require? Just what does that look like?
Well, most people become members by getting a GTIN. And we've got two different approaches to doing that. It's pretty straightforward either way. It involves coming to gs1us.org and completing a very simple e-commerce transaction. The first way to do it would be to license a prefix, which means licensing a bundle of between 10 GTINs and 100,000 GTINs. And that's, I guess we call that one GS1 Classic. That's what people are most familiar with. One of the great benefits of licensing a prefix that I think a lot of people aren't aware of is it does come with some other things. We've talked about global location numbers, and we've talked about serialized shipping container codes already. In order to generate those identifiers, you do need to have a company prefix. But once you have that prefix, those two things are included. So, especially if you're a growing business and you want to get into larger retail, or you have sort of very specific requirements with other trading partners, prefix is a great way to go. So that's the first way. The second way is relatively new. It's really a reflection of the fact that GS1 standards are industry driven. So it's as of 2021, you can now license a single GTIN, which means just one GTIN at a time. If you choose to do that, you're going to pay $30 one time. The prefix does have a renewal fee, so the single does not have that renewal fee. It's just the one-time transaction. And it's actually an extremely popular option in the Amazon community. And I think there's a really good reason for that, which is, Michael Shashuk from Jungle Scout gave a presentation at the Prosper show, and their surveys found that about 44% of sellers have less than 10 products, right? So really makes sense that for them, that single GTIN is a great offering. And we're really proud to be able to offer that single, to make sure that those sellers that, maybe just have a few really successful products but want to get into global standards can, get involved without paying for something they won't use. So,
yeah.
And there's a tool that we have either way, whether you go with the prefix or go with the single, you are going to get access to our Data Hub tool for free. It's a portal where you can create, manage, and store your GTINs. So you can keep track of sort of what you used and what you still have left over. And you can also add really key product attributes, things like your description, your brand name, if you have proprietary SKUs. So it's a really great way to sort of start a product catalog if you need to do that to sort of stay organized and continue to grow.
Definitely. Awesome. Lots of benefits there. Well, you guys, we're going to take another quick break here from our sponsor. And then I want to be able to give folks more information on where to get a hold of you guys if they are interested in joining or if they have any questions for y'all. So we'll be right back in just a minute.
Today's episode is brought to you by GTITA, the global leader in FBA auditing and reimbursements. Get $400 in free FBA reimbursements at GTITA.com/Sellernomics.
All right, you guys, again, you know what to do. Head over to GTITA.com/Sellernomics for the first 400. Shane, Megan, thank you so much for all of your information today. Are there any key questions that I missed out on, or any key pieces of info that you guys think the audience needs to hear before we give them details of where they can get in touch with you guys?
Yes. So the one thing I'd just sort of like to touch on really quickly is that, GS1 standards, they're used business wide, but, the real goal is to impact consumers in a positive way, ensure that consumers can get what they want, when they want it, and where they want it. And I think, for e-commerce sellers, from Amazon, if you're D2C, if you're at any marketplace, if you're expanding, that's what you want to do too. So I think there's, a lot to be said there. We're very supportive of online sellers. We're very supportive of the Amazon community, and sort of we're all in this together. Rising tide lifts all boats. And always feel free to reach out if you need any help.
Incredible. Where can they reach out? That's a perfect segue. Thank you, Megan.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So we are on, you can always come to our website. Megan explained earlier. So that's gs1us.org. Don't go to .com. I don't know where that's going to take you. So there's a ton of information there. And again, we have, somebody who's just starting out and needs some additional education. We've got great videos. And then you can see, if you can see all the different industries that we just talked about and kind of what we're doing within different industries. We're on all the socials for the most part. So we are on LinkedIn. We are on Facebook, and we're on Twitter. And then we are also on YouTube. So we've got some great videos on YouTube specifically for small business. There's some really good information there. So that's where you can find us. Megan and I are out there in the market. We try to do a lot of different trade shows, and that's why we love being on these, because this like your podcast, there is a face with the name and with our organization, and we are just trying to help. So.
And they are really helpful, nice folks, you guys. And if you want to learn more about Shane's story, native plug here, he actually did an episode of Prime Talk not long ago. It might release after this one does, but definitely good to check out, hear about his story and his time in retail beforehand. And it's just very interesting. So if you guys have any questions for Shane specifically, his email is smorris, SMORRIS @gs1us.org. And to reach Megan, it's same format. I love a uniform email process at a business, MBAUMER @gs1us.org. And then Megan, you had mentioned the member services. Folks can reach them at info@gs1us.org. What kinds of things can member services help with, just to reiterate?
Yeah, they're an amazing team. Reach them by email, info@gs1us.org. You can go on our website and find their phone number if you have a quick question that you have to get answered now. They can help you with a lot of different things. They can kind of go over the details of the standard if you're unsure, sort of if you need a new GTIN in a certain place, or if you're having issues with the website, if you're having issues with the login. That's a lot of them, actually. A lot of questions they get are just about, how do I log in? So, always feel free to reach out. They're extremely knowledgeable. They're very, very kind, friendly people. They're one of our biggest resources here. So we're always happy to give them a little bit of a shout out.
Absolutely love it. Shane, Megan, thank you both so much for your time today. Really appreciate having you on. And this is definitely a great episode. Helped me understand GS1 US better. I think the first time Shane, you and I talked, I was just like cross-eyed and I was like, I don't get it, man. And it took a little while, but this is very, very helpful. So thank you.
Good. Well, we appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
And thank you everybody who tuned in today. We will see you on the next one.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Sellernomics Podcast. Special thanks to our sponsor, GTITA. Did you know that Amazon probably owes you money for FBA reimbursements? Get $400 in free FBA reimbursements at GTITA.com/Sellernomics. Be sure to join us again next week for more great tips on how to grow your business. And thanks again for listening.